associated with mental health tend to be Aries, Gemini, Virgo, Scorpio, Pisces, and Aquarius.
Hi people, welcome back to my YouTube. It is your girl Honey. Welcome back people, welcome back. And those of you who are new here, welcome to my channel. Here we talk all about astrology and we like to dive deep. Those of you who follow me on Instagram, you guys have voted for the mental health video first. If you aren't following me on Instagram, I recommend following me to be the first to kind of vote for what you would like me to make next. And everyone on my Instagram pretty much voted for mental health in astrology. So I want to dive straight on into what placements you were likely to find in mental health. Just to kind of make things clear, right? Not everyone that has every placement that I am going to mention is likely to have a mental health issue that they're dealing with right now. However, the issue could come up later on in life, or it could have been an issue that you were dealing with when you were a lot younger. So it all just depends on where you're at in your life. Please do not shoot the messenger. Whenever I think of mental health, the first thing that comes to mind is Mercury. Now, Mercury is ruled by Virgo and Gemini. Gemini in particular represents the nerves in the brain. And the brain is what gives us that chemical imbalance going on. So let's just think about when we have a Mercury placement. What happens with Mercury? Mercury is how you gather information, how you communicate, and also how you process information. If Mercury is at home in Virgo, what happens when it's in the opposite sign, i.e. Pisces? Now, Pisces Mercury is very common placement for people to deal with some sort of mental health issues at times, especially if your Mercury happens to also be retrograding. And what we see there is that this person is really dealing with the polar opposite, which is the Pisces, because Pisces rules Neptune. Pisces associates with the 12th house. And we also see, when you think about Neptune, it's the planet of your unconsciousness, your escapism, naivety, illusion, disillusionment. I always say Neptune is such a foggy vision planet. And when you have Pisces that is linked to Neptune in the planet of Mercury, that's where we see that Mercury struggles to kind of see things clearly. Mercury is our day-to-day routines. Mercury is our communication, how we process information. And when Pisces sits in Mercury, it's bringing a lot of the confusion of Neptune towards this. And this is very similar to people who have Neptune square and Neptune opposed, especially the oppositions. Oppositions are really difficult when it comes to mental health in astrology. If you deal with Pisces Mercury retrograde, there tends to be a really difficult imbalance mentally. And what you're trying to figure out is, how can I do the day-to-day basics, the everyday routines, which can be brushing your teeth, having your breakfast, getting to work on time, driving, just having a regular everyday routine. We are seeing someone who struggles with this and wants to escape the everyday routine. They're creating routine every day that works for you, and you have a place to escape to. And that place is somewhere that is like a retreat, something that really stimulates your spirituality, somewhere that's so safe that you can meditate in peace and no one disturbs you. I always advise to my clients who have this energy is that you need to wake up every day. Before you go to work, before you do anything, don't pick up your mobile phone. Leave it for 45 minutes to an hour. Do not touch it. And just remember, you are a spiritual being, but you also need to be in touch with your spirituality on a day-to-day basis, because this is also a very, very intuitive placement. But a lot of people struggle with the intuition, going along with your Mercury, which is your logic. So there's just, which one do I trust, my logic or my intuition? Which one is it? And that's why it's important that you are meditating every day to become more in control of what's happening with you mentally. And that all goes hand in hand when you have Neptune in challenging aspect to your Mercury. Transits are also something important to track. So if you are a late degree Pisces Mercury natally, Neptune right now is transiting through Pisces. I believe Neptune is at about 19-20 degrees Pisces. I think it can be Gemini Mercury, Sagittarius Mercury, Virgo Mercury. You will have Neptune aspecting Mercury, which can create a lot of of ups and downs in your day-to-day routines, and you're really struggling to create that harmony, that balance in your life. So bear that in mind. I want to talk a little bit about like autism, ADHD, because I don't look at ADHD as being like a mental health problem. I look at it as being very advanced. I know it sounds crazy, but I'm going to explain why I look at it like that. In terms of autism, there's a massive spectrum. You can have severe autism or high functioning autism. I find people who have like a lot of 12th house energy, especially if Jupiter is in there, multiple placements in there with Jupiter supporting that. I do look at that person as dealing with a lot of like autism, but particularly high functioning autism. And these people need a place to escape. So if you had like an autistic child and your child was sharing a room with their sibling, I wouldn't recommend it, because kids who deal with autism or people who have autism and a lot of energy in that 12th house, they need their own isolated place, do what they want. Autistic people, they really desire routine and a lot of structure in their lives. And when they come out of that, it's like, oh my God, I'm losing control of what's going on. We also see losing control of what's happening in their 12th house, their unconscious mind, their unconscious thoughts. And that's why I say, give them like an instrument. Give them a coloring book, or just give them something that they should be doing, and this really helps with them to escape to a happier place, which is, you know, playing music or learning music or whatever it might be. That 12th house stellium with Jupiter placed in there, they just need that happy place to escape to. And no one gets it but them. Mercury aspect Uranus, people, this is another placement that I find in association with ADHD. ADHD can be found with people who have a nice stellium, Aries stellium as well, Uranus aspecting Mercury as well. When I say aspect, this can be the trine, this can be the sextile. I'm looking at it more so as trine, square, and opposition. Sextile, you may need other supporting planets to kind of contribute to maybe there being more ADHD. Think about Uranus, right? Uranus is surprise, upheaval, unexpected events, unorthodox. It kind of is this electricity, this lightning bolt, just flicks, like just constantly flickering in terms of producing energy towards the Mercury. And Mercury needs mental stimulation. And when you have that, you are someone who gets very easily bored. And again, it's not like a mental health issue, but we do see that there's a lot to do with this person struggling to just stay focused. And we link that to ADHD. Because ADHD people need to constantly be doing something and being very active and busy. And this is just because they need the energy, the mental buzz. I know that a lot of people have said that ADHD is like a boy's disease, and it's not, because I see it in the charts of women just as much as boys, very much so in fact. When I say Uranus can make you very advanced, this is where you see very small kids like have this really quirky, unusual interest in like numbers, just constantly needing to kind of be mentally stimulated. So even for you as the parent, if your child has this, it's very important that you are giving them lots of paperwork to learn about things, because this is what contributes to them being very advanced. Let's talk a little bit about Chiron. You know when people just ask you, oh honey,
What does it mean to have this or have that and have...
I'm like, oh, and these are people that I know, and it's like, the people that I know, I don't like to talk to about how they're gonna die, what's gonna happen with them, because they're gonna just take it so badly. I just hate going into that. However, I do find whenever I see Chiron in Gemini to be a placement that can contribute to there being some sort of mental health issue. And a lot of people make it through life and they don't deal with any mental health issues when Chiron is there. However, in terms of growing old, there could be dementia involved. I would then link Parkinson's disease, which is something like a nerve in the brain. Gemini is involved. I also link that to Uranus as well, because you can deteriorate quite quickly with Parkinson's. So let's go into moon signs now, now, because moon signs is very important. Your moon is what makes you feel emotionally fulfilled. So there are particular moon signs that I would link to, okay, that person has that moon. Let me now look for whatever else can confirm this person dealing with mental health. So the first moon that I see, Gemini Moon, just got to say it, Gemini Moon is the first moon that I see. And the reason why I noticed the moon being Gemini is because Gemini is a mercurial moon. We could also go with Virgo as well, but it's more so on the Gemini side. Now, Gemini Moon people deal with a lot of like mental imbalances because it's Mercury. It's okay, do I think or do I feel with my emotions? So Gemini Moons can be very confused about how to emotionally express themselves and even understand and embrace the deep feeling of the feels. And this can also go hand in hand with some moon oppositions, especially if Mercury is opposing your moon. Your moon could be in anything, any sign. If Mercury is opposing your moon, this can be an indication that you may deal with it, or even your mum may deal with it. A lot of Gemini Moon people deal with it because it could have been inherited from your mum. The placement of your moon as well can contribute to this. I do find moon in a water placement, specifically Pisces or Scorpio, in the 6th house. The 6th house is the house of Virgo, house of Mercury, and the house of daily routines and health and well-being. And that house there relates to what we're dealing with every single day. So if you have moon in that house, we see you dealing with your emotions every single day, and we know the emotions change. Okay, because the moon is always changing phases, so we're always having to focus on how to stabilize the moon. And that is also a placement that I do link to people really needing to have a very strict, thorough routine starting from inside the home. And you know, some people that have 6th house moons deal with like agoraphobia, anxiety. I mean, IBS just came to mind, but IBS is a more of a physical health issue and a fear of losing control. Yeah, this is all down to anxiety. But I look at control as Virgo Moon, 6th house moon, Scorpio moon. These people don't always like to be out. When you leave the house, you can't control what's going on around you. One placement that I have found to be quite common is the Taurus moon. Yes, people, Taurus moon. However, Taurus moon in aspect to Pluto, especially. Taurus likes to be very controlled in its environment. The moon is your environment, and we like to see someone who's very organized and very thorough, well put together, a beautiful home environment. Nothing can go wrong here. The second you leave your house, your friends invite you and say, look, can you come to my birthday? Be there for 6 o'clock. You're there for 5:59. And you're there on your own because no one's turned up. No one's here. And it's getting you really irritated. Like,
Why did I leave the house?
Because you can't control what other people are doing. And this is where we see the frustration, especially if Mars or Aries is involved. And that's where we see people who deal with irritation. And they're just like, you know what, fuck everyone else. I don't want to be involved with anybody anymore. And then they turn into a recluse. This opposite of the moon and Pluto, right? Moon oppositions are very common in mental health. And we usually link it to a form of bipolar. When you think about bipolar, it's like split personality, 2 different people. And the moon is a placement that relates to what you emotionally need and feel comfortable. So if your moon is in a fixed sign, you're very particular. Yeah, if your moon is in an earth sign, you're very particular, you know, about how you need your environment to be. But when it comes to the Pluto creates change, transformation, intensity, power struggles. So you requiring control. But Pluto also creates the trauma of the moon. So this is actually stemming from a childhood issue, a home life situation, something to do with mum. Maybe mum was someone who wanted everything to be controlled or in a particular way. You know, and even if you don't deal with mental health, that's another thing. You're going to attract people and relationships that are very on and off. And someone else will probably have a mental health issue as well. You may end up dating in the long term. And they're teaching you, especially as a Taurus moon, about emotions, because a lot of people who do have Pluto aspect their moon fear dealing with their emotions. I have clients that are worried about going to get diagnosed. They are dealing with bipolar disorder. And a lot of the reasons behind this is because Pluto creates the fear of really seeing the psychological levels of your moon, how deep it really goes. And what Pluto can do is it creates this intense feeling for the moon, and it can be really uncomfortable on a day-to-day basis, just trying to manage your emotions and the intensity of your emotions. I always say to my clients, like, it's important that you are facing this, going to get diagnosed, by trying to kind of be a little bit more proactive about it, and just coming to terms with accepting that, okay, yes, I have very intense emotions, but how can I work around stabilizing them? It's difficult because a lot of you guys deal with control issues, and it's about just trying to relax and realizing that you can't actually control every aspect of life. Another place that I do find is Sun to Moon opposition. I have a whole series on this where I've spoken about the actual signs, you know, Virgo opposed Pisces, Aries opposed Libra, etc, etc. I'm still kind of completing it, but I still have this, I've got that series, so I'll link this series above here, but make sure you guys check that out. So I have noticed the theme, especially with people who deal with schizophrenia. I noticed the schizophrenia comes through when you have planets in your 12th house, planets in your 6th house that are completely opposite. But I also see it quite frequently with Sun to Moon opposition. It's interesting to actually watch these people, right? Because my favorite example has to be Cardi B, because she's a Libra Sun, right? But she's an Aries Moon.
Don't you know New York bitches are savages? Okay. Maybe it was wrong for me and Swift to flirt, even though I did not know he had a girlfriend. But at the end of the day, like, you still didn't like me. You been not like me because you judge women like me. What was the reason?
I had a reason.
What was the reason?
I had a reason.
What was the reason?
I just explained the reason.
What was the reason, bitch?
I don't need to explain myself to you. And
What was the reason?
me. Actually, bitch, you don't know nothing about
You was burning the London Bridge, bitch. The they show, then it show what the I did, bitch. I was cracking you. You was like, help me, help me.
All right.
I remember there was a live she did on Instagram, and she was talking about, yeah, you know, I got tested for bipolar. I'm not bipolar. But I found it interesting that she thought she was, and she's had other people who have said, yeah, you're bipolar. So although she hasn't tested positive, it still visually seems like she's dealing with bipolar disorder. But again, a lot of this is down to her having the Libra Sun with the Aries Moon. It's like, how can you be these two different people? But she can. When you have oppositions, we can see that there can be bipolar disorder or just completely polar opposites in one particular person. You can also see borderline personality disorder when we have Pluto in aspect to the moon. I do see it in aspect to the sun as well, but more so with the moon because it does create a lot of very intense emotions. In terms of schizophrenia, I do link this more so to a 12th house issue, especially if there are 12th house Mercury with Jupiter in harsh aspect. I have definitely found there to be schizophrenia issues. When Neptune is very much involved with Mercury. Nodes are also involved as well, so we can see, you know, Mercury is in conjunct the North Node, or Mercury is squaring the South and the North Node. Even in terms of depression, and most people in their lifetime will experience depression at some point. With some people it could be situational depression where something happens that makes you feel a bit depressed. It can be high functioning depression where you are functioning perfectly fine but not realizing that you are depressed, or you are trying to avoid dealing with your depression. I feel like that's very common for a lot of people because we all have stresses, anxieties, or we all have depressive moments, but we try to avoid it by filling that gap with something else rather than facing it. In terms of depression and not necessarily knowing how to get out of it or how to fix it because there should be a solution, right? I always look to see, well, where's Neptune? There's two different ways to find this, but I do find Neptune is a placement that I'm looking for. So Neptune's been in Pisces since 2012. And at the moment, Neptune is currently at about 19-20 degrees Pisces. So he's still got quite a long way to go still. But a lot of you guys will have probably had that really empty feeling. You know, when nothing makes you feel good, like, you know, your favorite food, favorite movie, or things that are supposed to be fun. You just feel empty and numb. It's Neptune, because Neptune makes you feel like confused about what is this feeling, like what is this. When it aspects your moon, a lot of people do go into a form of depression at that time. And I always use the same example. Kanye West is the best person to use for this. I made a whole video talking about this, right? But Kanye West is a Gemini sun with a Pisces moon.
To get it, I feel like you avoided this album title.
Yeah, no, I don't.
I mean, what it says right here on the
I hate
title.
being bipolar. It's awesome. I have a theory about you, so tell me if this is correct. I feel like you feel like being bipolar is part of what makes you brilliant, part of what makes you you, and you embrace it.
Yeah, I think that's another one of those things where people are like, how are you gonna talk about it? The funny thing is, this is something I was like on the internet before. It was kind of funny, but it's not an opposite. It's not I hate being bipolar, it's awesome. It's actually, it drives more of how you really feel. It doesn't do an opposite thing. So I think it's important for us to have conversations about, you know, open conversations about mental health, especially with me being Black, because we never had therapists in the Black community. We never approached like taking medication. And I think it's good that when I had my first complete blackout at age 5, my mom didn't fully medicate me, because I might have never been yay. And there's times where at least I'm happy that I know, like even like for this interview, I knew I wanted to stay in a calm state, because by the time I got to TMZ, I was ramped up. So what was awesome is that the world got to really experience someone in a ramped up state. And that's when you get these comments that just shoot out, like almost like Tourette's.
Because you have highs and lows, and when you have a high, you're on a roll, and when you have a low, you're not.
A lot of people that do have Neptune aspecting their moon, they end up finding religion. I kind of feel the best thing to do at that time is to find whatever is going to make you feel spiritually understood. Your moon and your Neptune are looking for a really deeper meaning in life, and it's about you just trying to find that. Capricorn Moon, Saturn also an aspect to your moon. I find that these placements deal with severe depression. Like when you think about the moon is ruled by Cancer, and the moon changes phases every single day. It's in a new sign, people, every 2.5 days. So the purpose is to kind of express your emotions and express your feelings. But Capricorn and Saturn is about, I want to control that. I want to govern how I express my emotions. I don't want to be out here showing vulnerability. I don't want to show people that I'm unstable. I've got to emotionally deal with how I feel myself. Or I've got to restrict my emotions because I've grown up in an environment where I have to grow up earlier, or I have to deal with a responsibility that takes away from my childhood. I may not have been nurtured in the way that I was supposed to as a child. It becomes this learned behavior where you have learned to just restrict and just hold everything in. And a lot of people deal with depression. I do find when Saturn is conjunct Moon, it's very difficult because you're almost starving the moon of what it needs to have through this learned behavior, and they are not sure how to feel emotionally fulfilled, because again, a lot of it is the learned behavior. And I always say to everybody, it's very important that you are going to have therapy, you're seeing a psychotherapist, and even if you haven't got the money to afford it, there is always someone out there who is training. And that's why it's important that you contact these people and just ask for a free 30 minutes, because it helps them with their experience, but it's also helping you in your moment of need. Literally type into Google, go to LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a really good website where you've got a lot of people who are training. Message them directly, ask if they have any services, or even if they don't, ask if they know of anyone who does. These people suffer in silence, like a lot. They like to completely disappear. Like you'll find people go off social media, and put their phones off, and they will sit in their own depression. And you see, a Capricorn Moon's depression is felt all throughout the house. So if you live with someone else and you might feel like, you know what, I just want to be in my own space. I don't want to, you know, burden anyone else with my emotions. Even if you're in your room, people know, people feel it. It's so heavily felt. And to other people, it feels like this heavy feeling that, why can't they just fix it? Or why can't they just do something? Like, that's how people treat you as a Capricorn Moon, because they know that you are usually very strong and you get through everything. So when you're in your emotions and you want to be on your own, they're still looking at you as just get over it. And that isn't always easy. Sometimes to understand a Capricorn Moon's emotions, you really need to dive really deep, and they will make it hard for you kind of get there, unless you've got Neptune there, but they will make it hard for you to get there. But you have to be patient with these people, because this is a very dark, depressive placement to have. Even in terms of anxiety is very, very common and can probably be found in many different ways of looking into the birth chart. But I do find Mercury moons, Virgo moon, Gemini moon, Aries moon, Mars aspecting your moon, Uranus aspecting your moon, Mercury aspecting your moon. The reason why a lot of this is around the moon is because the moon is your environment. And when you have planets that are squaring, that are conjunct, that are opposing, gives it the irritation. I'm unhappy here now. I feel frustrated now, especially if there is Mars involved. I always say Mars. Even in terms of like Aquarius moons deal with depression as well, but it's almost like they like to put themselves, they tend to isolate themselves. And as we know, Aquarius moons need to have a sense of community, be around a lot of different people. But it's really important that if you have an Aquarius moon person, you ask about their surroundings, their environment. Even in terms of Aquarius is one of those placements that really require a lot of mental stimulation. These people can very much be very isolated in their lives, or isolate themselves at times as well. And it's important that they are finding a community to have very intellectual conversations with, because if they don't, they will feel very isolated and feeling like there's no point in talking. What's the point in, you know, emotionally expressing, because no one really gets it. So they tend to be very in their own world. Like, let's be real, every single sign, every single moon placement has a way in which it can feel depressed. Some moon signs are more depressive than others. However, it's very important that you are looking at the condition of your moon, the sign of your moon, and you are getting exactly what your moon needs. Like Leo moon people, Leo moon is a placement where people really need to have a lot of fun, socialize, and be creative. If all you do is go to work, you go home, you do housework and chores, and you're not embracing in your music or your creativity, you can very much easily become depressed. So that's why I'm saying it's based on the condition of your moon and how well you know your moon to know what you need to have to keep your moon happy. Even in terms of postpartum depression is when you had your baby but you're really struggling to kind of nurture your baby. You feel guilty that you can't give your baby what you feel your baby needs to have. And this is very common. A lot of women deal with this depression. I have found it to come through the baby's chart. Seen it in charts where the baby can have Pluto conjunct their moon, 6th house moon, but you may also be someone who has placements in your chart that can contribute to you being someone who deals a lot with mental health anyway, or even anxiety. In terms of like the solar return chart, right, if you had just had a baby, you might be a 1st house moon, 4th house moon, 10th house moon, but you happen to have Saturn in your 12th house or Saturn in your 3rd house. You can also have natal Saturn conjunct your moon. There's so much different things that can contribute to you dealing with the postpartum depression, that it comes through. You know what's quite common that a lot of people go through? I think I have this, PMS. It's kind of like minor depression that comes just before your cycle. And one thing I've realized is I don't like Cancer moons, right? Not as people, I mean in terms of when there is a Cancer moon. That puts me, for 2 days, I can't even tweet, because it puts me in this depressive stage where I just don't want to talk to anybody. And a lot of that is because I'm an Aries sun with a Capricorn moon. Aries squares Cancer, Capricorn opposes Cancer. And Capricorn and Aries struggle with the emotional expressions in terms of how Cancer deals with it. So when it comes to Cancer moons, it's asking, get down to earth, honey, express your emotion. I'm like, no,
I don't want to. Leave me alone.
but that is what happens. In terms of obsessive compulsive disorder, I do see this very common with Taurus moons. The Earth moons, Earth in the 4th house, Libra risings especially. I would say Virgos, but I kind of feel like there needs to be something positive in the 6th house. Because Virgo people do this thing, yeah, and this is common, and a lot of people will be very surprised by me saying this, but Virgo risings are untidy. They are messy, and they will behave like their shit don't stink. They will behave that way. You go into their environment and see that they got cups everywhere, plates everywhere, they ain't washed their bathtub in how long? Trust me, you will see. Virgo risings aren't always the most tidy people, but they will point out a crumb on your rug. Let's talk about phobias. I feel like it's Pluto related. I have a phobia, I've got 2 phobias, and I have Pluto in my 6th house. 6th house is the house of your daily routines, health and well-being, employment and being of service. One of my phobias is sick people. This is the house of health. And when I say sick people, I mean like that's what I mean. Usually phobias kind of start where you are in an environment and you can't run away. And you are not nurtured in that moment. From being a child, I've been okay with it. Up until I turned 7 or 8 years old, and I was on a coach trip, and it was on like a 3-hour drive to like Brighton, where like there's like a beach or a coast. And I was sat with my friend on the coach. I'm sat by the window and my friend is sat here. This other girl who we was friends with was sat on the other side. Wasn't supposed to eat anything on the way there, but she was like having a couple snacks here or there. I saw her back this drink, like she just backed this drink. And you know, when you're an intuitive person, something ain't right. You know. I looked at her like this, but you can't say nothing because nothing's happened yet. But the phobia didn't start. It was like, I wasn't afraid of it at that time. It's like, something ain't right. Literally in probably like 20 minutes, like I literally saw her just like that. I'm sat opposite her like I'm so disgusted. And the first thing I can do was hold my ears and hold my nose like this, close my eyes and breathe. Because I can't run away right now. I'm trapped on this coach for a couple of hours. She's still sat there and she's got sick all over her. And I can't escape. Literally since that time, I've had this phobia of sick people. It's so severe, I can't even talk to you if you've just been sick. And I know when it's gonna happen. This is something that you have to learn to face over time. And even for myself, I have to face it. People always ask me, so what happens when you have kids? Are you gonna clean up after your kids? And I'm like, I have to, but I'm shook. I am scared to do that, but apparently it's different when you have kids. My friend's got the same problem and she's had to do the same with her kids. So social anxiety is another placement that is pretty common. I do link this to people who do have 12th house planets, very unsociable moon, so like maybe a Scorpio moon perhaps. Also see Scorpio rising, Scorpio moon, Virgo rising, Leo sun in the 12th house, and obviously other different placements as well, but those are very common for people who deal with social anxiety. So just the fear of going out and people judging you or looking at you. Pluto in the 12th house as well. Just a right old worry about what are people going to think about me. Chiron in Leo, Chiron in Libra. I'm also linked it to Leo than Libra, to be honest, but believe it or not, narcissism is very much a form of mental health. But this is a form that relates a lot to experiencing a trauma in association with this. And one thing I've found is Saturn is heavily involved here. When you're someone who suffers with narcissism, I always have to look to see, well, what's happening with your parents? No, what's your relationship with your parents? How have your parents raised you or how have they treated you all of your life. Do look at narcissism as someone who has Sun to Moon square or opposite, very difficult aspects of Sun and Moon. We can also see a Scorpio Moon or Sun squaring Sun or Moon, right? I see a lot of aspects towards the ascendant. I see Saturn being placed in the 8th house. I see Saturn conjunct the Moon. And even in synastry with like your parents, we can also see your parents' Saturn conjunct your Moon. And what we're seeing is that emotionally you are not getting what you need from your parents, you know, so you are having to learn to just not have to depend on anybody or anything. And there we see someone who's going to learn to lack empathy, lack feelings, lack emotions, because what you have learned from your parents not giving to you, you're having to learn how to survive. And because you've been raised in an environment like this, you feel like, well, you know what, I came out fine, nothing's wrong with me, I'm strong. I don't have to be an emotional wreck and be so just sap. When it comes to dealing with feelings, these people struggle with identifying with it, with identifying with empathy. Trust me, they have a very hard time. People, the list is endless when it comes to particular mental health disorders. Anyway, people, that is my video on mental health and how to find it in astrology. I hope you guys have thoroughly enjoyed it. If you do have any suggestions on videos, please let me know in the comments below. All right, take care, people. Bye bye.